Right, I'll call this meeting to order. This is the May 3rd, 2022 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals Zoning. Present here today are Allison McGrath, Howell Morrison, Robin Richards, John Bennett, Will Goodwin Jr., and me, Jack Tibbles. Present from the planning staff are Lee Batchelder and Penny Ashby. These proceedings are being recorded, and we ask that those who speak, please identify yourself for the record. We will conduct this meeting in the usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, usually the Board of Zoning Appeals treats the matter as being uncontested and passes it as a matter of course. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from those opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. Then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. So the Board of Zoning Appeals zoning has the authority to do three things. Number one, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Number two, grant special exceptions, a fact-finding function of the board. And number three, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by majority vote of the members present at a hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum is present and qualified to vote. However, an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the board members present voting shall be required before a use variance may be granted. For variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. With that said, we'll turn to the agenda, and before I hit item number one of the agenda, I just want to talk about the voting procedure very briefly, because I know that the board has been meeting via Zoom and I'm new as the chair, so I appreciate your tolerance and patience with me, board members, on voting procedures. I will, rather than a roll call vote, the way that we'll vote on this board is I will say all in favor, say aye, and then we'll all say aye if you're in favor. And then I'll say all opposed, please say no or nay. And so that way, I won't roll call unless it's unclear to me who's voted which way, or if it's unclear to Ms. Ashby. But we won't go individually and call each name, because I think that slows the process down, and it follows Robert's rules to do it that way. So if you'll indulge me, that's the way I'd like to proceed with voting. All right, so we have item number one on the agenda today, review of minutes of the April 19, 2022 board meeting. Do I hear any motions relating to number one?
I have a correction, item number 5, 183 3rd Avenue. that there were 3 votes for and 2 against, and 3 votes for were Mr. Bennett, Mr. Goodwin, and Ms. Richards, and then against were myself and the chair.
I hear a second. You have a motion to amend to reflect that vote? Second, okay, any discussion on this? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. You've abstained because you weren't at the meeting. Mr. Morrison abstains. Now, the amended minutes are now up for approval. Do I hear a motion to approve the amended minutes? Do I hear a second? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No one opposed. Mr. Morrison abstains again. The ayes have it. The amended minutes reflecting the vote on agenda item number 5 from the last meeting are approved. All right, we go to item number 2, which is a deferred matter from last meeting, 192 Trad Street, Charlestown, TMS number 457070403A. Application number 2205-03-A2. Request special exception under section 54-110 to allow a 2-story addition, kitchen, family room expansion, bedroom, bath that extends a non-conforming 1.5-foot east side setback, 9-foot required, zoned SR2. Owner Jesse and Eliza Kimball, applicant Sebastian Von Marshall, architect LLC. Can we hear from Mr. Batchelder?
This application concerns a residential property in Trad Street. And it was before the board 2 weeks ago. At that meeting, the application was presented and discussed. A neighbor, immediate neighbor, was here in attendance and spoke with some concerns about it. And so at my suggestion, the board deferred the application. And I met with the neighbor and the applicant at the property Monday of last week and discussed it. And since that time, the neighbor has sent me an email saying that they support the project as designed. So I'll just go through it quickly. So this is the property location just west of Chisholm Street on the north side of Trad. Coast Guard Station is the large property to the left and residentially zoned. View of the property. The unusual thing is that the house on the corner is of an era when people were building single houses. The house in the middle, the subject property, is a much more recent home construction. And of course, the house on the left is also more recent. And so there's a variety of home styles right in these 3 homes reflected. And so the house subject property sits back from the street, unlike the neighboring property. And that gives them less room to work with as far as an addition goes to the house. So they have submitted these plans. This is the existing, these are the existing conditions on the property. This is a little 1-story section in the back that extends off the back of the house right now. And these are just other examples of the typical single homes and how they sit right on the property line. And this subject property sits very close to the side property line. I think it's only about a foot off that east side property line. So this is a survey of the existing property showing that house, 2 stories in front. This is the 1-story section right here. So what they would like to do is build a rear addition that is 2 stories in height. And it also will add a second floor over the existing 1-story section right here. And of course, it is located within the 9-foot side setback that's prescribed by the zoning ordinance for this property. This setback line right here. So you can see the existing house encroaches almost 9 feet. That's about 8 feet into it. And the proposed addition is set back just a little bit more east side property line. Existing floor plans, proposed floor plans, kitchen and bedroom upstairs. It's really not a very large house as it is today. Proposed elevation on the bottom. And this is the rear elevation on the bottom. Addition, and the addition shown on the bottom here. This is the view that the neighbor in the have. So we met on site and discussed it, and I wasn't aware of all the discussions that had taken place before and occasions. And so anyway, I got an email from the neighbor to the east, the Culvers at 190 Trad Street, indicating that they support the project and not here in attendance tonight. So with that, and I was recommending approval of this. I mean, these kinds of additions are pretty typical when you want to add on to these homes. It is a significant encroachment into the setback, but then the setbacks on these lots in this part of the city, the setback requirements on these lots typically don't reflect or even come close to reflecting the pattern of how homes are built on the lots. And typically homes are situated close to the east side property line when they're a more south facing house and have a wider side yard on the west side. And that's the case with 190 Trad. That's the case with 192 Trad. So the exception allows for additions extend the non-conforming setbacks of a house. And the test is whether the light and air impacts on the adjoining property are such that it makes that the proposed addition an unreasonable intensification of that non-conforming situation. That's section 54-110 of the zoning ordinance section here. So in this case, the neighbor at 190 Trad has indicated that they're in support, and they realize that there will be some impacts, but don't feel that it's an unreasonable situation for them. So with that, my recommendation is for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelder. If there is anyone here to oppose this application, which is number 2 on the agenda, 192 Trad, can you please raise your hand for me? All right, Mr. Von Marshall, do you have anything to add to what Mr. Batchelder said?
I do not, thank you.
Batchelder? Okay, so we'll close the public hearing, and is there any discussion? No discussion. Do I hear a motion?
Move approval.
Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. The special exception passes unanimously for 192 Trad.
Who was the second?
That was Richards.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. So now we'll go to section V of the agenda, new applications. Number 1 under new applications is 143 St. Margaret Street, Wagner Terrace. Application number 2205-03-B1, TMS number 463-10-04-029. Request variance from section 54-301 to add a covered patio with a 5-foot east side setback, a 14-foot total side setback, 9-foot and 18-foot required. Zoned SR2, owner Alex and John McElroy, applicant John McElroy. Mr. Batchelder.
143 St. Margaret is a residential property in Wagner Terrace. The proposal here is again dealing with a side setback and a total side setback. So here is a zoning map just showing the footprint of the house on the property, aerial view of the existing home, and proposed site plan shown here. And this is the proposed patio addition back here. A bit hard to see, but on the inside elevation, you see it right here. That addition will, as you can see, encroach into the side setback here. And actually, this is an unusual house in that it satisfies the setback requirements. That area, which are 9 feet on each side, as it exists today. Most houses, again, on these in Wagner Terrace are situated closer to a side property line. In fact, they can be as close as right on the property line, typically in this neighborhood. That's not unusual. Wider side yard on the other side, but in this case, we've got a house that is compliant. They're proposing this rear addition, this location. The neighbor that is most impacted by this proposal at 137 St. Margaret has written a letter here, the PowerPoint indicating that they support the approval of this variance to the side setback for that wood-story porch covered patio addition. And again, it's I think there's somewhat of a hardship with the design of the house and how they're proposing to take advantage of a small space that exists right now on that side with a covered patio that extends into that setback, but not full height of the house. So we recommend approval of this request.
All right, is there anyone here tonight to speak in opposition to the application number 1 on your agenda for 143 St. Margaret Street in Wagner Terrace? Please raise your hand. In opposition to that. All right, do we have the applicant here this evening? All right, is there anything you'd like to say about the application?
I don't think so. I think you covered it.
All right, public hearing portion of the meeting is closed. Any questions, any discussion?
Your driveway on that side?
I believe there's a driveway here. Looks like on the site plan, is that correct?
Yes, the driveway
Right where I'm using my
in the
cursor.
front yard.
Yeah. It doesn't extend all the way back.
This show the,
That's a different, okay, that's a different project. We probably, well, we don't have a photo of that, but you can see the driveway right here.
Mr. Batchelder, how wide would the patio be without the additional overhang? It seems extremely narrow if you were to try and work just within the footprint.
to be 12 feet wide. It seems to encroach 4 feet into the setback. So I guess it would be 8 feet. Not encroach into the setback.
I'm assuming that the tree won't be impacted.
There's no tree that would be impacted.
Yeah, this is, yeah,
No, nothing on either side of that line.
All right, do I hear a motion? I hear a second. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No one opposed. The motion passes unanimously. The variance for application B1, 143 St. Margaret Street, Wagner Terrace is approved. Thank you, Mr. and Ms. McElroy.
Thank you.
John made the motion. I will second. All right. Next application on the agenda is B2, 26 F Street on the west side. TMS number 463-16-03-047. Application number 2205-03-B2. Request variance from section 54-301 to allow construction of a single-family residence with a 2-foot north side setback, a 1-foot rear setback, 3-foot and 3-foot required. DR2F. Mr. Batchel.
so here's a residential property and you can see it's right at the end of I Street, situated on F Street. That's in the west side neighborhood. Backs up to what was the railroad right of way owned by Norfolk Southern. And was not used for that purpose in recent years. And so the city has purchased that railroad right of way, and it will eventually be improved as the low line, public space, public aerial photograph of the existing conditions. And there's a house on the property right now. So this is the house that is has been on this property for a number of years. The property is also zoned in a way that allows for a second dwelling unit to be constructed. So, and as you can see here, it's a fairly sizable piece of property compared to most of the other lots in this neighborhood. Here's a zoning map just showing that zoning that's in place for this property, DR2F. So the folks that own this property have owned it for a few years, and they came up with a proposal to build a second house on the lot. It shows that second house. This was actually approved by the city. I think I have a stamp, a city stamp on one of the site plans. And after they received their approval, they learned that there are sewer lines running through the property. There's a sanitary sewer line, storm sewer line. There are no easements on the property. Not sure how they found out about it, but they found out, and that obviously will impact their property because they can't, these lines are not such that apparently they can't be moved. They're serving other properties in the area. So, and here's the blow up of that image. So you can see there's a sanitary sewer, storm sewer, sanitary sewer. There's also a water line, but I think that gets relocated. These are the plans for the house that they had designed and received city approval for. Oh, here's the city stamp right here. This is a stamp of approval from city building inspections folks. So they were marching along and discovered this, and according to what they've indicated, they met with the CWS people and were advised that work around that sanitary sewer line. And so they suggested just shifting this house over to the side property line, the north side of the property. And again, in this neighborhood, that's very typical. You find homes that are situated close to the side property line. If I could get back to this aerial view here. You see homes, you see very narrow lots in some situations. You see other wider lots, but the homes are typically situated along a side property line with a wider side yard on the opposite side. The existing house in this case has that situation where it's almost right up to the north side property line. So what they would like to do is receive a variance to allow them to shift this house over to that north side property line. Right through these, get right to the site plan. So this is the site plan that was submitted, and there were some questions that we had about it. And so on this site plan, I've clarified what the applicant indicated to us. So they would like to locate the house 2 feet off the north side property line. And 1 foot, this corner right here would be 1 foot off the rear property line that runs along that low line property. So the setback variances are to allow that 2 foot north side setback and the 1 foot rear setback. That would, according to what they've indicated to us, move the house outside of the lines that they need to protect. And so I've indicated here that they have adequate space in this area of the yard right here to allow for the necessary parking for dwelling units. 4 spaces total. You can park two tandem cars on one side and 2 tandem cars on the other side. And so I've measured the width between the existing house and the side property line is 23 feet. And the distance from this front porch of the proposed house out to this point right here is 40 feet. So that tells you you've got a lot of room there to park 2 tandem rows of cars. And you have plenty of room for those vehicles to maneuver out of the driveway that exists on F Street right now. Because it looks like there's probably another 30 feet or so behind that area that I've indicated for the park. So there's plenty of room to provide that parking. What else? And I think, so the impact will be to the property to the north. If I go back to this right here. Shows the situation there, but it will be an impact to the property to the north. I know that the applicant has been in contact with the owner. The owner had an architect review the plans, the proposal, and email me with a number of concerns and questions. So I responded to that and provided the information they were looking for to their questions, and also told them that I would be supporting this due to the hardship situation that they have with this property. I don't know if they're still opposed or objecting to it, but I believe that I was able to satisfy their questions about it. One of the questions had to do with building code issues and design of this proposed house, which includes windows on that north side wall. They'll have to remove those windows, I believe, to get the building inspection's approval to build the house and meet building code requirements. But that's something that they can do. The rooms have windows on the front and back as well, where they can have windows. So I don't think there'll be an issue building code compliance, but that's really an issue for them to deal with as they move through the approval process to get their building permit. So I think they've got a reasonable request given the unusual circumstances of this property that creates this hardship for them. So
Okay, thank you, Mr. Batchelder. Is there anyone here, and I'd like for you, you'll reserve the right to speak, but I just want to see your hand if you're here to oppose this variance application for 26 F Street. Anybody here to speak in opposition? All right, do we have the applicant here? Arnold and Sarah Mack, do we have the applicants? Is there anything you'd like to tell the board?
Penny and Bechdel.
Anybody else here tonight to speak on item number B2? All right, yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm Councilman Robert Mitchell.
Yes, sir.
I represent, and I was, in contact with the applicant, and I'm in that area all the time, watching, seeing what's happening, and I don't have a problem with it either. So I would support it. The board see it. I'm always in that area, flying up this area, trying to make it very, even the low line is coming, so they'll be back up to the low line and doing some different things. I don't have a problem with it at all.
Thank
No
you.
one that called me to, as being the council in that area, said that they have a problem with it. So that's why.
Thank you, Councilmember Mitchell. Anybody else here to speak on this application 26F? All right, hearing no further discussion, the public hearing portion is closed. How about board discussion? Does anybody have any discussion, any questions? All right, do I hear a motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. The vote is unanimous. It is approved. Item number 2, 26 F Street West Side receives a variance by unanimous approval. Thank you.
So much.
Moving right along, we're on item B3, 8 Cleveland Street in North Central, application number 2205-03-B3, TMS number 463-15-04-085. Request variance from section 54-301 to allow construction of a single-family residence with a 1-foot east side setback, a 3.5-foot west side setback, a 4.5-foot total side setback, 3 feet, 9 feet, 15 feet are required. Zone GB, general business. Owner is Charleston Development Company, LLC. Applicant Julie O'Connor, American Vernacular, Mr. Batchelder.
So this is another one of these unusual circumstances. This map really highlights the odd nature of this lot. Very narrow and it's very long. So I don't know how this happened, because I think originally when this block was subdivided, this strip of land, which is now a separate lot of record, and has been for many years. I think it was part of the properties over on King Street. And it was somehow it was separated from those properties at some point in its history many years ago. So it's been there for a long time. It's never, to my knowledge, had a building on it. But it was zoned general business, so it could be all kinds of things, commercial things. What they're proposing to do, build a single family home. Here's an aerial view. So everything's much occupied on the site. This is a new home being built in this aerial photo here. But the corner properties and then this lot right here. Again, this is the zoning map, so you can see the corner property right here has a zone that allows for a higher density of residential development along with commercial development. There's a proposal that has been approved for that site, but I don't know if it's ever going to get built. We'll see images of what those buildings look like on that site in the architect's plans. Then there's the strip of land, and you can see how the other homes are situated around it. So it's a challenging site to try and fit a house on, or any kind of building for that matter. And of course, the other thing about this is general business. If you build a commercial building or a building with a commercial use on the ground floor, there are no building setbacks either side. So that's a little bit unusual. I guess there would be a 5-foot buffer required along the property lines that the property shares with the residential properties that are shown in the brown color here. So there would be a 5-foot setback because of that, but otherwise there would not be any building setbacks. So here's the application. The architect has provided some information about the history of the property. And these are views of the existing situation. So this is the lot right here. And this is the home next door on Cleveland Street. Another view of that home. You can see this fence runs along the property line, side property line of the property. So this is the property in question right here. And then these are views of the homes on Francis Street, which is the block to the north. And this is a view of the property looking from Cleveland Street straight back. But these are the buildings that were proposed and approved actually by the city for that corner property. So 3-story building up on the street with, I think, apartments upstairs and commercial use on the ground floor, and then another building back here. Somehow there was parking provided through this driveway, I think, on the site. This is a site plan just showing the proposed house. And this was actually scheduled to be heard by the board March 1st, but the original plan I felt was just too much, too large for this lot. So, and I'll have a site plan of that later on in the presentation. So I told the applicants I was not going to be supportive of the application. I think there were some concerns from neighbors as well. So they deferred the application and revised their plans and downsized the building. So the building, and I'll go over this at the end, I guess, but the building is smaller, it's shorter. And the other thing that they did was shift it over a little bit towards that, towards the east, to widen the setback on the west side of the property a little bit. That added the variances for the east side property line. This is the these are the floor plans showing the proposed two-story, 3-bedroom house. Is 1,746 square feet of heated and conditioned space. That's a 30% reduction over the previous house that had 2,162 square feet of heated and conditioned space. So the previous house was 4 bedrooms and 2,262 square feet. And it was 85 feet long. This house is 65 feet long. So it basically had another room added to the back here. That would have made it quite a bit longer. And so that the applicant has reduced the overall size of the house quite a bit with this proposal. There are elevations. The street view. So here's the house in question right here. This is these are the plans that were approved by the city some time ago for that corner property. And then these are the existing homes on Cleveland Street. This is an up close view of the lot with the house next door. I should have pointed this out, but the parking would be in the front. That's the only place to put the parking. Spaces side by side, going off Cleveland Street through the driveway that exists today. And that would be, there's no other way really to do that, to provide that parking. So that's the proposal. So this is the previous plan that was deferred from the March 1st BZA-Z meeting. And you can see the setback is roughly the same off the front, but the house extended all the way to the back and with only a 6 or so foot setback off the rear. So much larger and I think much more impactful to the adjoining properties, especially to the rear and to the west side versus what we have today. I can go back to if you want, but so I believe that I'm not aware of any objections or concerns from adjoining property owners. We've been in contact with them, so I don't know if there may be somebody here, but I'm recommending approval of this application. I feel like I appreciate the applicant deferring it from the previous meeting and downsizing the house considerably because I just felt that was way too much for this lot. And I think they have a clear case for a hardship. I guess it's a question of to what extent do you approve those encroachments, size of the house on the lot, but I think it's a reasonable plan. So I'm recommending approval of this request.
Thank you, Lee. Anyone here who was in opposition to agenda item number B3 for 8 Cleveland Street, please just raise your hand. Thank you. We'll get to you in just a moment. Because there's opposition, we'll allow the applicant to speak on behalf of herself for Charleston Development Company, LLC. Please state your name and address for the record.
O'Connor, American Vernacular, and my address is 50 East Lake Road, Mount Pleasant. I am the designer on the project, and just a few words because I do think that we pretty much covered everything. Thank you. This lot is 17 feet wide. 17. And the setbacks that are required are 50. So if we don't get a setback variance, we will have a 2-foot wide house. So I sort of envision it like a Harry Potter scene where you kind of walk in and all of a sudden it opens up by magic. And so regardless, in order to develop this piece of property, which is a lot of record, we would need a variance. We are not asking for a lot coverage variance. We are not asking for a height variance. We are not asking for a rear setback variance. Simply side setback variances because it would be impossible to construct anything on this property without that. You know, we sort of included some of the information for the property next door on King Street that will be developed, which is a pretty significant project. This is a single family house of 3 bedrooms and a very similar size to the neighborhood. So we feel like we have reduced it for these requests and are coming in with a very reasonable request. And again, this lot is undevelopable without setback variances for the size. That's all we're asking. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of the applicant, or is there a representative other than Ms. O'Connor for Charleston Development Company LLC? All right, let's hear from any here who are opposed to the application. If you'd like to speak, please come up to the microphone, state your name, and you'll have an aggregate total of 10 minutes to talk about your opposition.
Good evening, I'm Zan Hayward. I live at 1A, which is the property to the rear. My partner Blakely owns the property, but she is out of town, so I'm here. And we're not necessarily opposed to the property being developed. Just have some concerns about like rear facing windows because our rear patio and everything is just right there. And then also just kind of the height because we don't get a lot of sunlight anyway. And the little bit we do get just comes from, you know, the south, like kind of like right there. So those are mostly our concerns, height and privacy.
Thank you.
For the property.
My name is Christopher Manolenko. I live at 1B Francis Street with my wife Ashley. It's actually right next to Xander's place. It's on the back side of the property on the west. We have some concerns about the size of the building. We too would like to see it developed someday. In the neighborhood, the usual around surrounding houses are anywhere from 900 to 1,400 square feet. This one's 1,700, which we are glad that they moved it from 22 down to 17. We also have issues about the privacy as well. There's multiple windows that will be facing right down in our backyard. We also have some trees that are right on the lot line to the back west side, which probably be detrimental to them because they'll have to be cut back for a building to go there. That's about it. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to application number 3B on Cleveland Street? Is there a rebuttal?
Yeah, I understand concerns about privacy and sunlight. Obviously, we all want to have light and air, but again, just to remind you, we are not asking for a rear setback variance, and we are not asking for a height variance. I think that this house is perfectly within the standards for the neighborhood, and I can't remember, Lee, off the top of my head, how far we are from the rear of the property, but the rear setback, and we're significantly bigger than that. Can you?
Believe your plans indicate 21 feet. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it does. So we're 21 feet from the rear property line, which is significantly larger than the required setback.
What is the setback requirement from the rear?
From the rear, it's 3 feet.
Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else here to speak on 8 Cleveland Street? All right, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and discussion amongst the board. Any discussion, any questions?
We have architectural rendering from the rear.
From the rear, yes. This is the rear elevation. And this is the, that would be the west side elevation right here. So this back of the house.
Also, please go to the
Where it showed all the other buildings. Okay.
one, yes. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I had a question about this, Lee. This 6 Cleveland, is this part of the approved development? Because I see that it's vacant on the photograph.
No, well, that is part of the approved development for the corner property.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
Yeah, right.
So it is not yet built, but it is permitted and approved.
Well, I'm not sure if those permits are still vested or not. I mean, it went through the process once. I'm not sure about that. It's been a while. It went through our new process. They may still be vested. But then we haven't heard a word from those folks, so I'm almost wondering if that's not going to happen.
My initial thought when I first saw the streetscape plan was that I understand the challenges with the size of the lot and the construction, but I felt like it was a little out of scale with those historic homes to the west in terms of height.
All of that is leading onto the. At 10.
A201, it's the side elevation.
In fact, let me just try and answer Mr. Goodwin's question. So it's, I can't really tell. There's no clear dimension line for me to read. The height of this house versus the height next door. But if I have to guess.
Lee, I'm sorry to interrupt, but on the top of that, underneath each of those houses is how tall they are. You might be able to read it. And then on our drawings, you'll see how tall our house is, and that's the way they show it.
So the height of the proposed house is 34 feet. The house next door at 10 Cleveland is 28 feet. Proposed house. 4 feet. Yeah.
Portion of the house is shorter than the 34 feet.
Right. And I'm seeing that it's 34 feet, 11 and a half inches to the highest part of the house. front part don't have a dimension line.
So that looks to be,
Maybe 5 feet less, 4 feet less. 5 feet, I miss it, 5 feet less, I think. Maybe 30 feet. I'm not sure about that. I can't tell for sure.
do you know, this is a
Um,
elevation?
you know. Glasses, but I'm just gonna clean it.
All right, in the meantime, Mr. Batchelder, could the owner of 6 Cleveland pull a permit tomorrow to build the depicted on this drawing?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Would it have to go in the front yard?
Well, I believe, I'd have to check. I
Because it's on
just,
Eames Street.
oh yeah, we have to go before the AR. But I believe approvals have been secured. But I can check on that if you'd like.
Ms. O'Connor, I think this is an excerpt from architectural drawing from your office. Okay. So when you portrayed the buildings at 6 Cleveland and that address 975 Main Street, how did you come up with the design to draw those buildings at those locations?
Yes, so that is from the public file, when they applied to the AR, so they did apply to the AR, but I think it was something like 2017. So I'm not exactly sure the exact date, but I got these from the file of the VAR. And the front section of the house is 5 feet shorter than the tallest section of the house. So as it comes towards the street, it's 30 feet tall to the highest point. And then of course, there's a front porch as well, which is only 1 story.
Thank you. Do you know, and again, it's fine if you don't, Lee, do you know whether or not the owner of 6 Cleveland had to come before this board for any setback variance?
They did not.
Would that be because of the commercial property?
Commercial property and so they were able to fit these buildings on the site, meet all the parking requirements, meet the setback requirements, which are virtually none. Right.
Please go back to the rear. Sorry.
Height on the rear is what?
35 feet. 34, 11 and a half inches, so 35.
Did you go through how it fits on the lot again?
Pardon?
How it fits on the lot? Closer to
This is
that.
21 feet.
This is the indention in the lot right here. Is that right?
That's correct. There's it's a dog leg in the lot right there.
So we got approximately whatever that is in that small portion in the back.
Understand the concern about
privacy from second floor windows, as that's a pretty common problem in the city, that you've got, you know, neighbors adjacent, but at the same time, the two rooms on the rear of the property are bedrooms, one window facing north and two to the west. Not. Trees, I guess, would have to be trimmed up some, everything in, but. Definitely a challenging site, there's no question about it.
Under what you brought up to the one.
Size of the other homes in the neighborhood were closer to 900 to 1,000 square feet, so this one even reduced in size is much larger.
Pardon? Yeah. It is larger, I believe, because I did look at the
Smaller
square
than
footages.
It started at 2,200
Right.
and then it went to 7.
That's
And I
correct.
think it's just awkward when it's that narrow and it's tall. That it makes it look even more out of character adjacent to those historic homes.
Questions or discussion?
Scaled the plan, certain size that fits because of the number of bedrooms.
Such a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think that we had more bedrooms before, and we had 4 bedrooms. So we essentially just, you know, sort of cut out that bedroom, and we shrunk the size of really pretty much everything to get 500 square feet out of it.
One more question while you're there, sorry. The building at 6 Cleveland, the two buildings that are depicted, is there any indication that you found of the intended use for those buildings? Obviously, the big one is a commercial or retail use. That's at 975 King, but the one at 6 Cleveland, is that intended to be a commercial or residential use?
I think, and Lee may be able to answer this better, but I'm pretty sure it's a mixed use project across the board. So there is a good amount of residential within it.
Okay, thank you.
How high is the foundation?
It's only two feet, I think, is what the finished floor is, 2 feet above grade, I think.
Right.
And you did talk to the neighbor to the west.
Yes, and actually Penny was emailing with her as of yesterday, and she was in support. And my client met with her. She was mostly concerned that we would be further back from the street, so we told her we were 27 feet from the front property to our porch. And she had emailed Penny to confirm that it was in fact 27 feet and so she was supportive.
Are you at liberty to disclose the identity of the member of the LLC owner?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yes.
Can you tell us who the owner is of the
Yes, her name is
LLC?
Chantel Dorsey.
Locations on the lot sizes. Small and challenging.
put the rendering of the house again.
So this would be the east side, like the rear and the west side.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the west side.
Yes, please.
I'm just looking at this, wondering, could you lower the section in the back, this area back here? Reduce the overall height of that rear part?
Yeah, I mean, there's some massing, we can play around with the massing a little bit. It was just, again, we were trying to make it interesting and pretty. I'm not trying to say anything bad about the houses next door, but they have very low roof pitches and sort of not
Right.
typically iconic looking. And so we were trying to go for more, typical Charleston appearance. So in terms of, and that's why we wanted to drop this down, sort of be more streetscape, and then pop up as we kind of stepped back. But, this section could come down at least to this height. I just have to be able to kill this roof into this roof. So, I mean, it looks like I could come down about 5 feet probably to
Yeah, I
to
was
be
just
similar to
wondering,
the front.
not changing the pitch necessarily, 'cause
Right.
it's nice, but lowering this section.
Yeah, just so long as I can, complete this could maybe
Right.
come down and be the same.
Would you consider turning it quickly?
I can't do that, and again, it's just from a massing perspective, and that's why it's sort of facing this way, but actually it'd probably be better, because that roof will be going away from the rear neighbors, so I think it will let more light in for it to be this way.
Sometimes with smaller lots and houses that appear to be much bigger, because even though it's gonna be 1,700 square feet, it's gonna look a lot bigger. And so to an appraiser's mind, it creates a super adequacy, meaning like it's too much. And so sometimes as an appraiser, I might penalize you for that
Okay,
in value, as opposed to the quality of the construction, as opposed to the eye appeal. So get super concerned when they become super adequacies and feel like it's too much. I think it's a great idea if you could do that, if you can kind of scale it a little bit better to what's there, since that lot is so tight. I think it'll give a better look.
I think at the very least, I think it's a great idea, and I can easily see that it would work to lower this rear section to match the front section in height.
And that would be an easy fix.
Further discussion, further questions? If not, do I hear a motion?
And that we give the applicant an opportunity to
Okay, so, all right, would that motion include a deferral, Mr. Goodwin?
yes.
So there's a motion on the table to defer. Is there a second? Motion has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion to defer? Discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No, the application has been deferred. A unanimous vote. All right, the next item is number B4 on the agenda, 31 Darlington Avenue, Wagner Terrace. Application number 2205-03-B4. TMS number 463-11-03-004. Request special exception under section 54-110 to allow a vertical extension, second-story master bedroom, bath, closet, laundry room to a non-conforming building footprint having a 6.7-foot north side setback, 9 feet required, zoned SR2. Owner applicant Kenneth Warren Miller. Mr. Batchelder.
31 Darlington, another residence in Wagner Terrace. And single story shown here in this photograph. Existing view from the street. This shows the location where the second floor addition would be added to the rear part of the house. And, this view of that rear corner of the property. So let's see. So this is a blow up of this plan, of this proposed site plan up here. And I highlighted the dashed line that indicates the location of that second floor addition over the existing house footprint. Of course, they'd be making modifications on the interior to accommodate the stairs to access that revised bedroom layout. So right now you've got 2 bedrooms on the back, existing floor plan here, 2 bedrooms on the back. Kitchen here. Proposal would change the master bedroom to a dining room and then living space, bedrooms on the back, and add the 3rd bedroom up above. Master bedroom, closet, and bathroom. Elevations would look this way. And so I go back to this plan. I guess that would show it, but so the existing house footprint encroaches into the north side setback, 6.7 feet off the north side property line. 9 feet is required. So we would be extending that non-conforming building footprint with this second floor addition. That is a special exception under section 54-110 of the zoning ordinance, and again, the light and air impacts on adjoining properties. In this case, so this is the other elevation, set of elevation drawings. Here. In this case, they have presented this to the Wagner Terrace Neighborhood Association, and the Neighborhood Association sent us a letter indicating that they support this request. They voted unanimously at their meeting to support this request. And then we've got letters from the neighbors, the impacted neighbors around the property, 33 Darlington, 30 Darlington, and 29 Darlington, indicating that they're fine with this proposal as well. So I feel like they've got a clear indication from the neighbors that they're okay with the proposal. If I go back to this aerial view, this is something that people are doing a little bit of in that neighborhood. So here you have another situation where they've added a second floor, that 1-story or 1.5-story house. So we've got a lot of 1-story homes up there. Again, homes are typically situated so they don't meet the setback requirements on the sides at least. So they have to come before the board, seek these kinds of approvals. So it's not uncommon up in that neighborhood for this. And I guess this is a way of providing a happy medium for folks that want to add more space but don't want to fully change the 1-story nature of the historic home. So For all those reasons, we recommend approval of this request.
Thank you, Lee. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this application for 31 Darlington in Wagner Terrace? Is the applicant here, and would the applicant like to speak?
The owner and applicant Warren Miller is not here tonight, but my name is Clark Ferguson, and I'm the architect to answer anybody's question. The city helped him quite a bit with all of his legwork and everything.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Anybody else here to speak in favor of the application? All right, let's talk. Any questions, any discussion? No questions, no discussion. Do I hear a vote on the motion? Excuse me. Second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. Passes unanimously. The special exception for 31 Darlington Avenue, Wagner Terrace is approved. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Next item on the agenda, number 5B5, 8 Cavalier Avenue, Parkwood Farm Field, application number 2205-03-B5, TMS number 349-11-00-047. Request variance from section 54-301 to allow an 8-foot fence to the rear and side property lines, 6-foot height limitation. Owner applicant Edward Bleakley.
This
Mr. Batchelder.
residential property. West Ashley Farm Field. Location is shown here. What you have is a property that backs up to the Greenway, which is a former railroad right of way. And like most railroad right of ways, they have a elevated area where the train tracks used to be located. And so what's happened is not so much on this property. We have a few requests to build fences along the Greenway that are taller than the 6-foot height limitation of the city. Vegetation for years along those rear property lines. Yes, they take a little bit harder line with that than SCEG did. So that's caused a problem for some folks. This property didn't have a lot of vegetation, it looks like, but nevertheless, the new owners of the property would like to put up a new fence to replace what's there, as you'll see, and would like to have a taller fence to block the views that people have from being up on the Greenway into their rear yard. So the property is situated right here, as you can see. The other thing I'll point out is that this is the baseball field for, I don't know who exactly, but it's a baseball field. And then you've got the Greenway right here. And, property is situated here. They are undertaking major renovations of the house and would like to rework the pool in the backyard, as you'll see on the site plan. But so what they've asked for is a approval to build the 8-foot fence along the rear property line and this west side property line. And these plans show the proposed renovations with an addition off the back and other changes to the existing house they've already been permitted for. And they'll come back and do more substantial landscaping in the backyard once they're finished with all this shown here. These are photos of the existing conditions. So the pool, and I haven't been out to the site, but I talked to the owner and I can see what they were explaining to me on the phone, which is that the pool is elevated even more than the rest of the yard. So it was built into the ground, but elevated a little bit. So it's about 2 feet taller than the rest of the yard. And in one photograph, you'll kind of see how the yard rises as it approaches the pool. So pool area, which is over in this corner of the property, is a little bit taller. And the fence that's there, which is about 5.5 feet tall, doesn't do much to screen the neighbors. And this particular neighbor has indicated to us that they have no objections to this fence. We did that phone call this afternoon. And here's the pool. And again, this is the view of that property next door. And then this is the view looking from that pool area towards the greenway. So this is the greenway back here and Farmfield Avenue in the distance. Again, Farmfield Avenue in the distance, the greenway coming through here, 5.5 foot tall fence existing. More photographs of that. Looking the other direction, that corner of the property. So again, the greenway is right there. Another view, folks on the greenway riding their bikes. Another view. This is the one you kind of start to see the rise in the yard right here. Subtle, but you kind of see how it right there, and that fence goes a little bit shorter back here. So they would like to build the taller fence along the rear, that west side property line. They indicated they have people in Farmfield Avenue even have a pretty clear shot looking into the backyard with the existing fence, and another 6 inches won't do much. So, and saying I'm going to do this. I did try and do this once and I didn't get very far for whatever reason. But I really want to change our rules that limit the height of fences in most of the city to 6 feet. On the peninsula, residential property, you can have a 7-foot fence anywhere on your property, front, back. If you're on Daniel Island, it can be 8 feet in the back and I think 4 feet in the front. What I would like to do is increase the 6-foot height limit that exists for the rest of the city. And that's front, back, and change it so it's higher in the back and shorter in the front, and with some exceptions. And so I'm going to be working on an amendment, trying to get it passed by City Council. I feel like I have a good case because I've looked at the town of James Island, Charleston County, other municipalities that are interwoven in West Ashley and James Island and Johns Island. So we have residential homes that are in the city versus right next door being in the town or the county. They have rules that allow 8-foot fences in the backyard. So I think that's a bit of an unfair situation for people in the city, frankly. So I'm going to be proposing some changes to hopefully address this situation and make it easier for people to do this kind of thing when they want to without coming to the board. But we don't have those rules in place yet. So we have to deal with these variance requests. That's the only way. And I think they have a reasonable case here with the situation for the surrounding properties and how the yard is situated. So I'm supportive of this request. We're not aware of any objections from the neighborhood. Know that neighbor on that west side is okay with it. So.
Thank you, Lee. Nobody's here to speak in opposition to a Cavalier Avenue, are they? Okay. The applicant is Edward Bleakley. Applicant, like to say anything? Okay. Any questions or discussion? Do I hear a motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Unanimous approval. Variance is granted for 8 Cavalier Street in Parkwood Farmfield. Final application this evening is B6 13 Peaks Pike, Avondale, TMS 418 10-00-82, application number 2205-03-B6. Request variance after the fact from section 54-301 to allow a detached accessory building greenhouse with an 8-foot north side setback, 9 feet required. Owner zoned SR1. Owner Eric Cook. Applicant Joel Lambinas. Mr. Batchelor.
This is a residential property in Avondale, situated here. Property, I guess to the north is a commercially zoned property along St. Andrews Boulevard. And another aerial view is a property zoning map showing that commercial zoning. So you see the existing house and a detached building garage in the back. And then over here is the proposed greenhouse. The owner had contractors start work on it, and they realized that there wasn't a permit from the city, so they contacted us and said, is that a problem? And we said, well, yeah, a little bit. And the situation is that it doesn't quite meet the 9-foot setback. Our rules that allow us to grant approval for these at a staff level with an encroachment into the side or rear setback don't apply to a second accessory building on the lot. It only applies to one accessory building. And you can see that there's already a garage in the back here that closer to the side and rear property lines than the setback shown here. So we couldn't apply our staff approval standards, and they've come before the board seeking your approval in order to locate the greenhouse 1 foot into the rear set or the side setback along the side property line. The rear setback, I view this as kind of an extension to the side. And then the rear property line being back here. It's a bit of a judgment call, but we make them all the time because of the odd situations we have in the city. So I don't have an issue with the rear setback because, well, with the setback off this side, because it does meet the 9-foot side setback back here. It's only that one side relative to this property line is 1 foot shy of meeting the setback. So that's the greenhouse, what it'll look like finished. Here is the foundation that was constructed adjacent to the fence that is the property line. So, and these are letters from other neighbors. This is a neighbor, I guess, at 781 St. Andrews Boulevard. The commercially zoned properties, and then another commercially zoned property here. So there's no impact to any residential property because the property's on the other side of the property. So we recommend approval of this request.
Thank you, Lee. Is there anybody here on item number 6, 13 Peaks Pike, Avondale?
Yes, sir, we're here.
Okay, and are you Mr. Cook?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there anything you'd like to state in favor of your application?
He pretty much covered it all.
Any discussions, any questions? Do I hear a motion? Second. Favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. The motion passes unanimously. The variance is approved for 13 Peaks Pike in Avondale. Thank you. Any other business for the board this evening? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Just to let you know, so